Sales are easy. It's making the call that's hard. Hi, my name is Dave Gallegos. I've spent the last 25 years in the mortgage industry and a lifetime in sales. In this show, I'll bring that experience, expertise, and the experts I've met to you with actionable advice to improve your sales. It's not magic. You just make the call. Hey, everybody. It's Dave Gallegos, and this is Make the Call. This is, I'm loving doing this podcast. This is episode 20. And according to all the podcast stats that I'm looking at, this puts me in the top 1% of podcasts if I get to episode 21. So yay me. Anyway, thanks for listening. For those of you that have listened, and please share this with your friends, give me a rating, download it. The more downloads, the better. I really appreciate that. And our focus on this podcast is to just talk about everything that I've learned after 27 years in the mortgage business and really my whole career in sales. And Make the Call is just that. It's like at the end of the day, it just comes down to making contact with people. But today, we're not going to talk about that specifically. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite subjects. I have a quote that I love. I love to start these off with a quote. And the quote that I wanted to actually have three for you. This would get 3 for 1. And this is from one of my favorite inspirational leaders, Jim Rohn, who isn't with us anymore, but man, that guy, if you haven't looked up Jim Rohn, that's R-O-H-N. If you haven't looked up or listened to any Jim Rohn stuff, you're missing out. So please do that. But here's got 3 quotes that I want to share. Successful people have libraries and everyone else has big screen TVs, right? Second, those who will not read are no better off than those who cannot read. And that's true. And then number 3 is the books you don't read can't help. Jim Rohn, all 3 of those quotes are from Jim Rohn. This one to talk about this week. This won't be a long podcast episode, but it's an important one. One of our core values here at Zenith is striving to grow personally and professionally. I believe in growth of the individual. And as a leader of the company, I want to encourage everybody to become their best version of themselves. And I know that you can do that through reading. I was really lucky as a young kid. I started to read and I just loved reading. I loved reading stories and my mind's really active and it goes really fast if you can't tell by just how fast I talk. It just always had a massively positive impact on my life. I loved being inspired by the stories that I read. And I think that's what it did. And I loved reading about people's lives, really successful people or people that had a big impact. I read everything. It feels like I read everything I could get my hands on John F. Kennedy when I was a kid. I was born in 1960. So gives you an idea how old I am. And he died in 1963. And then by the time I was 6, 7, 8 years old, I was in grade school and there were all kinds of books about him and they were fascinating to me. And I was just always reading and I was always learning and I loved it. I've said before, I wasn't a great student in school, but when it came to reading, I really loved it. It's a life-changing habit. And if you don't have it, you can certainly get it as a habit. And I'll talk about some of the things that you can do to, change this in your life. But there's a really powerful, inspirational, motivational speaker. I hate using that motivational speaker term, but just a great growth leader that I've listened to before. You all heard of Charlie Tremendous Jones, personal development writer and trainer. And here's a great quote. You are today the same you'll be 5 years from now, except for 2 things. The people that you meet and the books that you read. The people that you meet can't always be with you. But what you read can remain with you for a lifetime. How often we hear of individuals who began a new era in their lives from the reading of a single book. That's really powerful. I'm cultivating the development of a big library. I want to have a lot of books in my life. I have a lot of books here in my office. I have a bunch of books at my home. And it's such a blessing to be able to read. And this is why it's important that if you understood that 90% of the world's population in the year 1820, think about that. In the year 1820, 90% of the world's population was illiterate. That's scary, isn't it? Today, almost 90% of the people can read. 90% of the people, we have a 90% literacy rate in the world. So that's a huge difference. That's a fantastic gift. And my question for everybody who listens to this podcast is, do you take advantage of that? Or do you just use your phone to scroll through mindless BS on social media sites, right? So Facebook feeds and Instagram feeds, or are you reading something that's really going to help you and grow you? There's no single area of your life that you couldn't improve by the reading of a single book, right? So think about that for a second. Any subject that you wanted to improve in your life, you could just by finding a book on the subject and reading it and deciding that you wanted to get better. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. Health, fitness, diet, sleep, hydration, finances, raising kids, taking care of your elderly parents. I need that right now. Marriage and relationships, improving your work skills, improving your habits, improving your morning routine. The list is endless. And here's what's really cool. In the digital age that we live in now, you can find a book on the subject by Google searching it and finding, you have a list of books at your fingertips in nanoseconds. Like, it takes no time at all to find a book on that subject, right? And then you can tell by the stuff that we listen to here or listening to this podcast, you could probably get clues to a lot of books. I'm certain that I brought up The Compound Effect, some of the most impactful books I've read, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. We did the podcast with Ryan Pettigrew. We talked about Psycho-Cybernetics, what an impactful book that was for him. Two of the most impactful books that I've ever read in my life, bar none, The Compound Effect and Psycho-Cybernetics. And then when it comes to sales, Fanatical Prospecting, oh my God, a life-changing book. Renee Rodriguez's book, I can't think of the title off the top of my head. Fantastic book. There's so many books that have had such a big impact on me. And so the reason I'm talking about this is that about a year ago, I attended a conference on building wealth. There you go, striving to grow personally and professionally. That's one of our core values. And so if I want to be better at building wealth, I want to study wealth building. And so I was at a conference. It was clear that the guy who ran the conference was an avid reader, because he sent us a couple of books before the meeting, and then a couple more books before the conference, and then a couple more books at the conference. So I'm like, oh, this guy loves to read. And it's not surprising because most high achievers are readers. And so it wasn't a surprising thing, but it's just nice. And that's how you know you're not at a conference and the guy's a poser. Like he's real. He's like, oh, this book is really good, and this book is really good. Well, he casually mentions during the conference, he casually mentioned a speed reading course that he had taken called KwikBrain. And when I got back from the conference, one of the first things I did, I was reviewing my notes on the conference notes, and I looked up the course. It's KwikBrain, and it's not QWICK, it's KWIK Brain. So KwikBrain. And the guy's name is Jim Kwik. It was a couple $100 and it was a 21-day course, and each lesson every day was 10 to 20 minutes long. So it doesn't take a lot of time. And I signed up. I finished the course. When I started the course, I timed myself reading at 300 words a minute. And I could comprehend what I was reading. I typically read pretty fast anyway. So I don't think I'm a crazy fast reader, but I'm pretty fast and I can comprehend what I'm reading even when I'm reading quickly. And I was already kind of using my finger, moving my hand across the page. Anyway, as I had gone through that course, I timed myself reading over 1,000 words a minute when I got towards the end of that course. Now, I'm sure I'm not reading at 1,000 words a minute today because I didn't stay up with the activity of continually doing that. And I'm not always reading a book. A lot of times I'm reading things that are online. But when I'm reading a book, because I sit in my sauna every day and I read in there, I read like that because I'm able to just get that much more done. 1,000 words a minute is like 3 times the amount of information that I'm taking in at the same time. I feel like this has made reading kind of a superpower for me. And so his website is a KwikBrain speed reading. Or just look up Jim Kwik, KWIK, if you want to get more information on it. But what would it mean to be able to consume and absorb information that it can improve your life 2 or 3 times faster than you can do it now? I mean, without exaggeration, wouldn't that make reading a superpower? Wouldn't you become like some kind of a superhero if you could do that? It's just a really powerful thought and a really powerful concept. And like I said, I was blessed because when I was very young, I just, I picked up a book and I loved to read. I used to read. Yeah, I read stories about people's lives. I used to read the Reader's Digest. My mom was getting the Reader's Digest, so I was reading those stories. I was in reading clubs and reading things in school. So I came by this naturally. I didn't have to learn it. But so how do you develop the talent? First of all, if you're not a good reader, then the first thing to do is Google, how do I become a better reader? Or Google books on the subject of how to become a better reader, because you can improve this skill. You have to have the why, like, why am I wanting to become a better reader? But there's so many times that you can improve. There's so many things, so many areas of your life that you can improve upon. So first one would be, how do I become better at reading? And then the second thing is, you can do it. Darren Hardy recommended something where when he wants to get better at something, he has this formula that I use. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it was like a certain amount of reading every day, attending, read 3 different books on the subject, attend a seminar on the subject, practice it for a certain amount of time. All of that's great. If you want to become a reader and if you want to become good at reading, you got to find a subject that is important to you. So if there's an area of your life that you're trying to improve upon, and I named a bunch, become sleep better, get better sleep, better health, better finances, better family relationships. I mean, these are all the key areas of our lives that are important to all of us. Better professionally at whatever your career path is. And all you have to do is devote 20 minutes a day or 10 pages a day in a book. You read 10 pages a day. In 10 days, you've read 200 pages. And in 20 days, you've read 400 pages. And it doesn't take long to read 10 pages in a book. And you'll get better at it. By the way, the more you read, the better you get. And if you're finding 200 and 300 page books, that means a 300 page book, you could read a book a month for 12 months. If that's all you read was 10 pages a day, and you can read a lot more than that. But if you just started there, how much smarter and how much better would you be at anything that you decided to get better at if you were going to read 12 books on the subject over a 12-month period? A lot better is the answer. A lot better. You'd be light years ahead of everybody else that you know that doesn't bother to do that are spending all of their time watching TV. I definitely want to encourage people to do this because it is life-changing, and it's certainly changed my life. And I know that I've shared the idea of reading with everybody that's worked at Zenith over the years, and so many people have. It's very humbling to hear how it's changed their lives. And so I would like the same thing for you. That's today's message. It's make reading your superpower is what I would tell you to do. And then, as always, make the call. Right? Because you're not going to get more business if you're not making the call. So make the call. It's right there on the sign behind me. That's it, everybody. This is episode number 20. The next one is episode 21. If we get to episode 21, apparently we're getting the stratosphere of top podcasts. Please share this with your friends. Let people know what you think. Let people know that you like it. And please give me a rating if you haven't done that. Again, my name is Dave Gallegos. I'm the president of Zenith Home Loans. If there's ever anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Make the Call with Dave Gallegos, brought to you by Zenith Home Loans. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, and share the show with a friend or colleague who would also find value.